Good evening, YouTubers. I'm sorry for being late with this one, but I generally watch these air accident investigations and stuff like this, and it's one of the things because I'm a pilot, been a pilot for nearly 30 years, so it interests me tremendously. Now, straight away, we've had two nasty crashes very recently. One was in Washington, DC, and the other was in Philadelphia. Now, I like to give a sort of my idea of what happened, because everyone's horrified and shocked when there's a crash, and everyone wants to know what went wrong. And we will never know until the end of the investigation, which can take over a year in some cases. And with the Washington DC one, there's loads and loads of speculation on it, and obviously the jet airliner was destroyed. The Apache was destroyed, not an Apache, the Black Hawk was destroyed, and they all finished up in the river. Now, lots of fingers have been pointing at the helicopter, and quite rightly so in a lot of respects, because the helicopter shouldn't have been there in the flight path of a landing jet. I mean, that goes without saying, but you see, aeroplanes would be crashing into each other all the time in the dark, and this is why we have a thing called air traffic control, and they've got them all on radar, and they're talking to them all. They know what height they're at, they know what they're doing. And we've also got a thing called controlled airspace. Okay, now in the UK we divide it up into A, B, C and D. Class A, B, C and D. If you're in Class D airspace, you can do what you want, you can fly where you want, because nobody cares. Okay, it's not important. C and D, B and C are in the middle, and Class A airspace, that's around a major airport, which this is in Washington DC. Okay, and you have to talk to air traffic control. You have to talk to air traffic control when you're in there. Like, they want to know who you are, where you're going, what you're doing, where you are, what height you're at, and they've got you and they're talking to you. And their job at air traffic control is to stop aeroplanes from banging into each other, which is obvious, isn't it, really? Now, there's a thing called the constant relative bearing, okay? And if you're in a pilot of an aircraft and you have another aircraft on a constant relative bearing, it means it's there. It's not moving and it's getting closer. It's not going up, down, it's there. So a collision risk is there. Now, if the pilots had seen each other, either pilot of either aircraft had seen each other, they would have taken evasive action and there wouldn't have been a crash. We like to think. I know it's early to say, but my big problem with this is a problem, this is a fault of air traffic control. It's in Class A airspace. Air traffic control dominate. Everybody does as they're told in Class A airspace. Okay? And it's the air traffic control's problem to make sure everyone is aware of other aircraft in the sky, what they're doing. And if there's a problem, if there's a conflicting traffic problem, they would alert the landing jet to power up and go around. It's easily done. You just call the call sign, say go around, they say again go around. Boom. If the helicopter, they say there's a collision risk, do something, do a 180 drop to a lower altitude, because helicopters, you can just lower that lever and they will drop like a brick, so then the collision is avoided. So in my opinion, without going into like loads of detail, I've seen loads of people going into one on this is an air traffic control problem. I would, if I was the investigators, I would be all over air traffic control, because that is where I think that the blame lies. Anyway, the other one, which was this one in Philadelphia, it was a Learjet, I think, something like that, took off with a casualty on board, some sick people going off doing something, and that has clearly fallen out of the sky. We saw the video footage of it. It came down pretty much vertical and spanked into a public area. Now, airplanes do not fall out of the sky, okay, unless the wings fall off or they stall. Okay, if they don't fly fast enough to fly, then they stall. What I think has happened here, and it's far too early to say, I think the pilots have had a real problem on takeoff, and they have attempted to keep control of the aircraft. They tried to turn it round to take it back to the airfield, and they've stalled it. Because airspeed bleeds away really, really fast in a turn. So, I mean, it's far too early to say, but my speculation from what I've just seen is I think that aircraft stalled and went in. It had a problem on takeoff, and the flight recorder will reveal all that. And of course, we won't get the results of that for a long time. But there's two very, very nasty, tragic. Air traffic control's not to blame for that one, because they were transmitting to the aircraft and it wasn't answering. Now, people often say, why wouldn't the aircraft talk to air traffic control if it had a problem? Well, there's a rule that the pilots learn when they're learning to be pilots, and it's aviate, navigate, communicate, and it's the priorities are in that order. You've got a problem, you've got to fly that plane. You've got to think of what's gone wrong with it. You've got to think about what you're going to do about it, and then you've got to navigate. You've got to be looking around. And lastly, and if you've got time, communicate, because communication is really good if you can do it, because you let other people know what the problem is and what you're going to do about it. But if you haven't got time, that's the least of your priorities, is communication. You aviate, navigate, communicate. And I think that their whole time was taken up with aviating and navigating. And I think they stalled it. I think they were turning it and they stalled it, and it just fell out of the sky, because that's what happens when you stall. And it just went straight into the ground. It spanked in. It was 30 seconds off takeoff, apparently, which isn't much, is it? Most dangerous time. I know people say landing is the most dangerous, but it isn't. I can assure you, as a pilot, taking off is the most dangerous part of the flight. That's when things are most likely to go wrong. Okay. I mean, things can go wrong at any time in the flight, as you know, but in my opinion, takeoff is the most dangerous time. Sorry to be late with that, but like I say, that's just my opinion, just off the top of my head from what I've seen. First one, air traffic control's to blame. Not the helicopter, although obviously it was the helicopter caused the crash. But they were in Class A airspace, and they were under orders from air traffic control. They had to do what air traffic control said. And air traffic control were not on the ballway, didn't use any collision avoidance. They didn't tell anyone to go around or stop or whatever. They just were going, "Can you see it? Can you see it?" Yeah, no, the blame lies with air traffic control. I'm convinced. I might be wrong. We'll see with the results of the investigation. Thanks for watching.